everybody. Welcome to the now 5th episode of the 50 Minutes podcast. I'm Espen.
And I'm Moona Kitsune.
Today is really, really special because we have a guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm Disaster Angel 10 or Angle, and I'm here today.
Woo!
What are we going to be discussing today? Well, you're going to be leading us through a few things, so what are you going to be discussing with us?
Yes, what are you going to be yapping about today?
Yes, so today I will be yapping about the queer coding and queer readings that can be seen in the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Just quickly, so people understand, because we've never done this before, Angle will be running us through their topic, and we'll be asking questions. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments down below.
Yeah, I'll read.
And then hopefully one of us will get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Cross your finger. No, we're pretty good. We're pretty good.
Yeah, we're pretty good at
If we
replying.
remember to check notifications.
Oh, I always do. Don't worry.
Bro, I always forget. Like, I get so distracted and I'm like, I have to do this, and this, and then I do one of the things and I completely forget the rest.
Alright, so how are we going with that timer? Are we ready to start?
I'm about to start, alright.
Excellent.
Are you ready? Don't freak out. It's not stressful. You can just jump straight into your first point. Okay, 3,
Let's
2,
go.
1, timer started.
Alright, so to begin with, I'm going to be talking about the queer interpretations of the monster or the creature within Frankenstein, and looking at both the monster as a character and also as an aspect of the entire story and how that connects to itself. So the monster spends most of the story scared of people, a lot for his creation. He's ostracized a lot from society, and that's also carries through into Frankenstein, his creator, who also spends a lot of the story scared about telling people about the creature. Frankenstein decides to hide his creation and not share it with the world, which could be seen as a metaphor to being closeted, having this entire identity that you're hiding from everyone else. And a lot of the creature's story is about being rejected by a parent and a society for being different. That's its main goal. Well, it's not its main goal, but it's the main thing that progresses it through this story. And that's also very connected to a lot of queer narratives and queer experiences. Another thing that is also probably pretty important to highlight as an aspect of this is the fact that the creature is an active creation of life without a woman. It's Frankenstein himself and, in part, his best friend Henry Clerval together help Victor's research and help him create this life without woman involved, which is a lot of the times a very queer and unnatural reading, which does lean into this interpretation of it. And then, in accordance with that, there's also a lot of reference to Frankenstein wanting to create the perfect male, the perfect masculine being to exist. And that's really Frankenstein's goal for a lot of the time. And so, whilst that can be interpreted as a want for godhood, the idea of a perfect male, a guy creating the perfect male, sounds so gay, and a lot of people can interpret that as repressed homosexual desire. The idea that he wants to create the perfect guy who's strong and buff and big and tall. He just wants a hunk. What can I say?
I just think it through as, when I read it, I just thought through as he's literally digging up bodies to find the perfect part of each body.
I know. He's like wow.
How long was he staring at these people to be like, yeah, that's a nice hunky arm? Like,
wow, this hand, it's so sinewy.
When you word it that way.
On him.
When you word it that way, I kind of can't argue. Not that I was ever going to argue, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Poor choice of words on my part. My apologies.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, so, and that's all like from Frankenstein's side of this.
So real.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so tired. But then looking at it from the creature, so the creature is used as an aspect of the other, which was quite often referred to in this era of Gothic literature. So it's ostracized from society. And the other is also interpreted in a lot of literature to echo queer relations and stuff like that, whilst the other doesn't necessarily mean queer. Queer often relates to the other in that weird manner. So this creature is often vile and hatred by society, and he shows desire for a mate just as vile and hated as him, someone in a similar social bracket. And this can quite easily be linked to queer people wanting to fall in love with other queer people, to have someone who understands their scenario. So this is all a weird mix of this creature being ostracized and wanting to find companionship in other people who are ostracized the same way as him. And this is, for the first half of the book, the main thing that we see in this creature. But then later on, after realizing that Frankenstein is to be married, the creature then shows interest in a desire for a bride. He asks Frankenstein to make him a woman who's just as vile and hatred as him. I think that's the quote. But so some people can interpret this as, first he simply showed desire for companionship, and now he's showing desire for a bride only after learning that that's what's socially accepted. So this desire and longing for a bride, a woman of the same species, could be interpreted as a last-ditch effort to fill out society's standards in some ways, a final sprint into being accepted in some form of social bubble. So this is, yeah, it kind of shows how, for example, he realizes that just wanting companionship as itself isn't enough. He also needs to show this heterosexual side to him only because society expects it of him, which can be evidently read with a queer interpretation. And so a lot of this time, looking at the creature through this lens, it's the creature and Frankenstein end up mirroring each other quite a few times. For example, the creature seeks a wife after learning that Frankenstein also seeks a wife. And when both characters, as I will go into explanation for Frankenstein further, can be read as heavily queer-coded, it's shown that together they're both struggling through the same ostracization of society, just to different degrees. They're both trying to find a wife in order to be accepted. They're trying to shun their true nature in order to being accepted, which, as seen throughout literature, more modern literature, which is definitely queer written, it's a very common trope. And just as a final little bit of this section of unpacking the queer interpretations of the creature and Frankenstein, so when the creature is denied his bride, the creature kills both Henry Clerval, Frankenstein's best friend, and Elizabeth, Frankenstein's wife. He kills both of them in retaliation for Frankenstein denying him a bride, which has interesting connotations, because the creature is denied simply a bride, whereas Frankenstein is denied both his friend and a bride, implying that they both have the same stature of importance for him and for the creature, viewing Henry Clerval and male friendship on the same level as a wife. And that's my little bit on the queer reading of the creature.
Just to quickly, because I just realized some people, obviously we all know what Frankenstein is. Angle and I both have pretty great understanding of it. I know Crazy I'm slightly obsessed with horror figures.
Mm.
But just so people understand, because some people don't still get it, Frankenstein is the dude, Victor Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster is the creature. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. Which was it? Probably wasn't important. But yeah, just so people, because some people still don't get that.
Yeah.
Gosh, the amount of people that still don't understand that scares me. Now I do have just a couple questions. Okay, so first, in regards to the idea of the other, what other examples are there, and why is this link so important and reoccurring?
So the other is so important and so recurring in both this kind of literature, in both this book and other similar literature, because this was the main separation between the characters and society, which is a very common trope. The Byronic hero, the monster, horror, gothic. The other separates the distinctions of this literature trope. And it's also very, very queer because the other is unnatural and satanic and against God and everything that queer people experienced in their lives at this time and in a more modern day. So, whilst the other wasn't written with a queer view in mind, it displays a lot of similar tropes and likelihoods that queer people experience. So, for example, it really links closely to social views and treatment, and it really echoes a lot of queer experience. And the thing why the other is such an important queer trope is because a lot of other queer tropes stem from very stereotypical views like the flamboyant and the feminine. And so these are stereotypes and hurtful, and they appropriate queer culture to singular identifying factors of the person, whereas the other shows is an identifying experience, not personality type. So that's why it's such a prevalent and important trope in this genre and in queer coding.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes. So, the creature obviously asks in the book, for people who don't know or haven't watched the movie, the creature asks for a bride after he is abandoned by Victor Frankenstein. He makes him, gets terrified by his creation, and books it out of there.
Horrible parenting.
Terrible. So do you think that if Victor hadn't left the
But
monster
it
and
can't
actually
be
raised
terrible
him
parenting
properly,
if it makes for good character development.
Yeah, amazing character development.
if Victor hadn't left the monster and actually potentially raised him, do you think that he?
That was kind of delayed, but it worked.
Do you think that he would have actually asked for a bride in the end? And could this, if this was set in a modern day, if this was written in a modern day, and the creature was abandoned, could this have like come out any differently?
I think, look, the creature's abandonment and consequential watching of society from a distance did lead to feelings of incompletion and a necessity of companionship, which he believed was a social necessity. And because he didn't get that companionship from Victor, he decided to ask for it in the form of a bride. I think that maybe if Victor hadn't abandoned the creature might not ask for a bride with that level of necessity. He might still want companionship in another being on the same social standing as him. I can see that, but I can also see the fact that if Victor had stayed around, if Victor had made the active decision to try and introduce people to the creature as another human being, I really doubt that the necessity for a bride and the violence and anger that bloomed in the creature later, I doubt that that would have happened. And also, looking at this from the modern day, in the modern day, I'm not sure. In the modern day, me personally, and some of my social groups at school and stuff like that, we all see the companionship of friends as much more important than romantic partners.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that if the creature, drawing from my experience, if I was the creature, I would ask for friends. I would ask for a few friends who are like-minded to me, who I'm able to just exist with, not a bride or a romantic partner.
So then would you say it comes down to a matter of perspective?
Yeah, I think whilst in the era that Frankenstein originates, it had to be a bride, whereas in the modern day, it would depend on the scenarios which the creature experienced and the social brackets which he was introduced to.
Just so people do know, this book was written originally early 1800s,
early 1800s.
Early 1816 to 1818.
I think so.
So original draft was made by Mary Shelley during a party in 1816, and she published it anonymously in 1818.
During a party?
And so back then,
during a party. Don't worry about it.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that, I probably would do the same. It must have been a boring party.
I guess I could quickly explain it, just so people get context now, and so they're not left hanging. But was it called the year of no sun or something?
It was something like the Year of No Sun. There was 5 of the Gothic writers all sitting together in a little chateau by a lake.
And they had a competition who could write the most,
the scariest,
who could write the best, the scariest story.
Yeah.
And because there was no sun outside, so they were all just indoors and locked indoors where there was warmth for the entire year. You can look into it further. Oh, banged my bloody desk again.
Don't worry, we can't hear it. It's all good.
Other people, if you want to look more into it, you can. But yeah, that's where Frankenstein breathed, and obviously because things were misogynistic back then, Mary Shelley did not publish it under her name.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other thing. She couldn't even write anonymous. She couldn't mention the author at all, but she had to have a foreword by her husband to make everyone think her husband wrote it.
Yeah. But yeah, just so people understand that and now don't believe that we're leaving them hanging.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I also think of in the modern day, there's so many, back then it literally was you grow up, you become a teenager, you go get married, you have kids, you die in 20 years. That was it. It was really, really fast paced. They had super short lifespans back then.
Oh, they
did, was basically it was basically grow up, learn 3 shit, get married, do the thing. That was
perish.
Try and try and have kids and hope that they survive. That was So, but now it's you have time to grow up. You can have proper friends. You can. There's obviously people who still are in relationships. There's also divorce now, though. There's also people that choose to just be single. There's so many, same-sex relationships. There's so many different experiences now for people. So it's it really, it would really depend on who potentially Victor would be in modern day that would lead to how the monster turned out, I guess. How he valued life.
Yeah, I think 100%.
So my last question on this segment is those are in the next part. Those are the next part. Do I? Oh my god, do have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm losing it. Okay, this one's a very quick one. How far do you believe the reflection of character goes between Frankenstein and the creature?
So the reflection between Frankenstein and the creature, I'm gonna unpack this a little bit more in the next paragraph, but oh my god, there's such a reflection between them. As I said here, they're compared to as a mirror. They're 100% reflections of each other. Whilst we don't really get in depth about their hatreds, we see a lot of their actions, and their actions are fueled by spite and anger and a mix of need for acceptance and aggression on people that have wronged them. Their desires as well. As I said, they both desire for acceptance, they desire for revenge. They both want to live in the beauty of life. Frankenstein just sees himself as a little bit more godly than the creature. But in turn, the creature also sees himself as a little bit more godly than Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the creator, that's why he's God. But the creature, he is a pure creation, the first of his kind, and so he feels he should be revered more than Victor. So they both have these interesting complexes that, whilst stemming from completely different origins, lift them up in the same kind of way. They're both so reflective of each other. And this is also due to Mary Shelley's original interpretation and her original writing of this. She wrote them as a child and a parent. She wrote them both as echoes of herself in a way. She wrote this book as a way of processing her own journey and failures into motherhood, whilst also processing her own lack of a mother in her childhood. And so it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Last question from me. Finally, the actual last question this time. Do you believe that Victor had a stronger connection with either Henry or Elizabeth, or that they were meant to parallel each other?
I think this is a very difficult question because both are true at the same time. Henry Clerval, his childhood best friend, Elizabeth Laverza, I think,
Yep.
an adopted sister, his later wife. We don't question that. They're both.
Hey, at least they weren't actual siblings being married, because that was pretty common back then. So
100%. But so they are 100% meant to parallel each other. They both have very similar character progressions.
I have like 100 unrelated questions going through my head.
Note them down. I'll answer as many as I can.
No, it's about the stuff that the marriage and the siblings and the okay.
Oh, I can
unrelated.
Quick,
hence why I said unrelated.
I'll do a quick 30-second backstory. So, Frankenstein's parents had, I think, 2 or 3 kids. They were all guys, and then they liked traveling. 3 kids? 3 kids, and they liked traveling, and they found this poor orphaned little girl who was really beautiful, and they're like, you're ours now. And then so they took that little girl and their 3 kids, and they went, you know what, Victor, you're our oldest, you're gonna marry her when she's old enough.
Actually, it would have been 2 at the time, because the younger
the younger
was not born yet, because he was born because they had 2 older siblings that closer in age, which is Henry and his brother, and then they had the little kid, and he dies though, so he's not important.
Yeah, don't worry about the little kid.
Rip the kid that dies.
He gets murdered by the creature. It's unimportant.
Okay, that does clarify it a little bit for me. Thank you. At least, like you said, at least they weren't actually siblings.
Yeah, but yes. So, best friend versus adopted sister, future wife. There are so many parallels. A lot with Victor's relation to both of them. He's equally close and equally distant to both. Both of them he's very, very close to, but he's also emotionally distant from the pair of them. And so they both also serve very similar narrative functions, and as I said, very similar narrative arcs. They both die around the same time. They both die in about the same way. They both get murdered by the creature after Frankenstein has wronged the creature as punishment. But so yeah, Frankenstein has very similar reactions to both and relations with both. However, the difference comes in their death. So Clerval is killed first, and when Clerval is killed, Frankenstein mourns for months. He gets so sick and so sad, he basically drives himself bedridden for 3 months after Clerval's death. You know, pure gay pining and mourning. It's sad but adorable. and then Elizabeth gets killed on their wedding night, and Frankenstein is just like, okay, moves on. So that's really where it's so funny, but that's really where you start to see the difference between the two of them and how much they meant really to Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was.
That's all your questions.
I don't have any. I
Moona?
think
that's
I've
all my
asked all my
questions.
questions.
Huh?
I think I've asked all my questions.
Cool. If you have any, interrupt me at any time.
As I have been doing. For which my
Yeah.
apologies.
Completely fine.
Oh, good, good.
I do not have a train of thought. I have a slinky of thought. It works. But so, all right, now I'm going to continue on to my next little bracket of information, which is, as well as evidently the creature having massive queer interpretations and coding, there's also Henry Clerval, who has significantly less, but I adore him with my life.
I think we all adored Henry.
He's so
Like,
stupid. Well,
he
he's not stupid.
he was so baby boy the entire book.
He's so baby girl. He's so baby girl. He's a little poet, and he doesn't even know it. I'm quoting Hamilton now, but he's a little poet, and he loves Frankenstein, and he's like, Frankenstein, my bestie Pookie. I don't want to get married. I don't want to go to school in my city. I want to just spend all of my life with you. It's adorable.
Oh, we're gonna have to force you to read the book after this, Moona. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry,
I still
we'll
have
skip
to finish the School for Good and Evil.
You'll read eventually. I'll give you my graphic novel when I steal it back from a family member who took it from me.
Will I get that when you give me my book back?
Skip all the letters by Robert Walton. Oh my god, I know it's an important part of the story, but
I hate Robert Walton.
That goddamn captain. I don't care what his importance to the story is. I want a story, not this confusing thing.
Oh, just so people don't get confused by that. The story, you have Robert Walton, he's on a ship, he writes letters, and basically the story actually starts in the future, and then they find Frankenstein, and the entire story is him telling you what happened.
Yapping. It's a story within a story within a story.
Within a story, aka unreliable narrators. Yes.
Ooh, that's an interesting way to look at it. But anyway, so quick 30-second recap.
I'll ask a question about that later.
30-second recap just to make sure. So we begin with this captain who meets Frankenstein. So we hear from this captain, and then we hear Frankenstein's story as told to this captain, and then we hear the creature's story as told to Frankenstein as told to this captain, and then we go back to Frankenstein's end little bit of the story, and then we see the captain's end bit of the story. It's called an epistolary novel. I hate them with my life. Anyway, continuing on.
They sound very confusing.
They are. It's just letters. It's so boring. Dracula is an epistolary novel, and I hate my life because I need to read it. But anyway.
Hey, most of the Gothic texts are, so.
Yeah, they loved epistolary
I personally love them because I think it's great. Because sometimes one person gets super boring, and it's great to finally get to switch over to a different perspective. And if they're written well, and the characters are distinct, it's beautiful.
Yeah, they can be done really well, but also just the letters, when you sit down and properly realize that you're just reading some guy yapping for 120 pages, it gets a little bit tiring.
Yeah, I remember.
Anyway.
I remember some friends of mine said that there was a story that they really liked, but there was one section in the story where the protagonist or the narrator, whoever it was just yapping about how much they loved their family for 7 pages, and it just became a drag.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's worse was it apparently had no relevance to the story.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to write in. But anyway, Henry Clerval, my baby girl, so he works as a foil character to Frankenstein, which I will explain with Espen's question soon enough.
Yeah.
So instead of, but most foil characters appear as enemies, but instead of Clerval appearing as an enemy, he appears, sorry, I'm yawning, he appears as a friend to Victor. And often when you get a foil character in a friendly relationship, that often does fall into common romantic tropes or very easily applicable to romantic tropes. And so the fact that you've got these two people who are written in 100% a romantic manner to each other, but they're both guys and it's the 1800s. Is it queer coding? Is it not? I don't know. But so there's a large dispute between a lot of Clerval's backstory and a lot of Frankenstein's backstory. Henry Clerval's father despises Frankenstein. Henry Clerval's father hates that Clerval likes to spend time with Frankenstein, that Clerval likes to travel with Frankenstein, that he hates that Clerval spends more time playing with Frankenstein and writing with Frankenstein and learning with Frankenstein than looking for a wife. And so if you swapped the gender of Henry Clerval, it would be 100% the build up for a romantic relationship, even if it's just one-sided. It is so very clear that there is some form of love from Clerval directed at Frankenstein throughout this novel. And even then, Frankenstein probably reciprocates it to some degree. They are utterly devoted. Probably. They are utterly
They're
devoted.
at each other's beck and call.
I know,
One
they
of them
are
asks, the
100%.
other person runs.
100% at each other's beck and call. They live like almost in Russia, and then Frankenstein just walks up. He's like, "Hey up, want to come to London with me for no good reason whatsoever?" And Clevel's like, "Let me drop everything I'm doing. I'm gonna go with you, Pookie." They are devoted to each other. And
We need like memes about this.
I
Yes,
need so
definitely
many more
memes.
memes about this. Henry constantly seeks Victor out. Quite frequently throughout the book, when Victor leaves by himself to travel, Clerval will appear 20 pages later, like, "Hi, bestie, you were here, I came to join you." And Victor never turns down Henry when he does that. Victor's always like, "You know what? You're here. Come with me. Let's hang out."
Just quickly letting you know, we have 19 minutes.
Oh, God. All right.
It's okay.
Yeah, it goes by fast, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, these are the big yappy points at the front. The rest of it is like minor out the back. And so, as I said, Henry and Victor's relationship mirrors Victor and Elizabeth's relationship quite a lot of the time. And Victor mourns Henry's death so much more than Elizabeth's. But I feel another
Could it be
thing
possible that after Henry's death, he just became more closed?
Probably. That's probably 100% what really happened. I'm sure if Elizabeth died first, he would have mourned Elizabeth greatly. But I can't tell if Elizabeth died first how much he would have mourned Clerval then. That's still in the air. But it became very, very clear in the book that when Clerval died, he lost so much of his emotional capacity. Where before there was a sense of beauty in the landscape and quite the I've forgotten the word for it, quite a sublime literature term, means you just love plants and stuff, quite a sublime nature in Victor. But after Henry's death, all of that love and appreciation of beauty is completely gone. There is nothing happy in his life anymore after Henry's death. And I'm sure if Elizabeth had died first, he would have gone through a similar spiral of grief. I don't think it would have been to the same severity, though.
Yeah, that's it. That for me, I agree with you, because when I was reading it, it kind of felt to me like, even when Victor felt like he couldn't talk to anybody, he talked to Henry.
He still talked to Henry. He was
And
like,
like,
"I can't talk to anyone." And Henry came
and he
up
would
and
like
he's
avoid,
like, "But you."
and he would like avoid Elizabeth, but then he would go to Henry. That's
Yeah.
the other thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, another thing is, after the creature's creation, Victor has a moment where he realizes what he's done. He spirals into depression and he forbids himself from talking to anyone except Clerval, who waits on him hand and foot and feeds him soup for months on end to make sure he's okay. It's so cute.
So is he?
Hmm.
Okay, wait. So where in the what's it called? Where in the timeline of adaptations of Frankenstein does Igor become a character?
Igor, I really don't know. Because Igor, look, as a hunchback, that's more of a. I'm just looking at this from a purely scientific point of view now. As a hunchback, that's more of a genetic deformity, not I don't know, mystical act of creation. So I really don't know where Igor becomes a part of it. I would say in much more modern text. Because that's when Frankenstein starts getting portrayed as an evil genius. Before he became an evil genius, he didn't need a henchman. He didn't need a weird lab assistant. He was just
right,
a
okay.
scientist who was a little stupid.
Yeah.
But also at the same time very smart because, well, he created the creature.
He created life, and he forgot to realize that if he created life, he would need to be responsible for said life. Oopsies.
All right. Are you finished with your?
I am finished with my yapping. Question time.
Perfect. All right. The big question that we said we'd get back to: what is a
Yeah.
foil character for those who don't know, and what are maybe one or two mainstream examples?
100%. So, a foil character is a character who's meant to mirror the main character in a way through their opposing personality or actions. They show the positive traits of the main character, and this is very commonly seen in hero-villain dynamics, such as Batman and the Joker. Batman's control, contrasted by the Joker's delirium, shows the positive side of both of those aspects, but mainly portrays Batman's control and how that's great. He's a hero. Then you've got Harry.
Did you write Voldy?
Yes, I did. I can't be bothered to write the whole thing. So then you've got Harry Potter versus Voldy Moldy. Evidently, you've got Harry Potter's
Moldy Moldy? When did what?
Voldy Moldy.
Voldemort.
You've got Harry's dedication and his love for his friends, which contrasts Voldemort's coldness and distance from everyone. And that contrast shows how Harry's love for his friends gives him more power and more control, and therefore makes him better. Then also, to use Arcane as a reference, you've got Vi versus Jinx, and that is very, very classically foil. They both have their own good traits, but all of it is absolute opposites of each other. And so this is the very, very, very common form of foil characters. But you can also see foil relationships in sidekicks and other types of pairings, which are still used to expose individual and unique traits through opposition, but not through enmity. So, for example, you have got, using Harry Potter still, you've got Harry versus Ron versus Hermione. You've got Harry's bravery, Ron's strength, and Hermione's intelligence, which all counteract each other, but still all serve to lift each other up and show how each of them have their own beneficial aspects to it themselves. Then you've got Jace and Victor from Arcane, who Jace is focused on progress and strength, whereas Victor is focused on intelligence and kindness, and they are.
Funnily enough, I feel like those two represent Frankenstein and Henry the most out of all the ones that you have.
100%.
Also, they were 100% gay. You cannot convince me otherwise. Jason and Victor.
Jason
Oh
Victor.
my god, I thought they were going to kiss at the end, but they didn't.
Did I?
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't see it.
You didn't?
No.
I'm gonna. What? Really?
Yeah, I
I'm sorry.
didn't see it. I didn't see that connection.
bring me in for another episode so I can yap about the foil character between
I
Jason
will.
Victor.
Like, I'm
And
not
also-
denying that, you know, like,
Yeah.
that's what you guys saw. I'm just saying I had a
Yeah.
completely different viewing
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I completely get that. Yeah.
For me, it was mainly at the spoilers for Arcane at the very end when they're like literally like holding each other and they're about to, and they're just like staring into each other's eyes, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, like he goes
Yeah,
out to save him.
I know exactly
Yeah.
what scene you're talking about, but nah,
Yeah.
that didn't.
That was mainly it for me. That was mainly the point where I was like, damn, okay. But also
For me, it
just
was
quick
mainly just the
appreciation. Just quickly appreciation for, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the Baby No Money, Victor and Jace, I can't remember who he did it with, but he did a Vic Jace cosplay and a whole photo shoot.
Nah, I haven't seen it.
JB not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of contrast each other, and those characters lift each other up and expose their unique and individual traits, which is a foil character. Clerval and Frankenstein do that to each other. You've got Clerval's love and dedication versus Frankenstein's determination and sense of progress. Jason Victor. Anyway, so there's that question.
It could also potentially be partially maybe the fact that they invent stuff that makes you think so closely to it.
Yeah, they have.
We have 10 minutes.
Oh god. Anyway, you can. It's up to you if you wanna. Yeah. Anyway, we'll continue at the pace we're going, and we'll see where we end up.
If we go like a few minutes over, it's fine because I'll probably do maybe a few cuts somewhere. Anyway.
Yeah. Hang on, just real quick. Given that you've got no questions written down in the next two sections,
I fell asleep. That's why.
That's fine.
If you want, you can just pick out like 2 or 3 main points and.
Yeah. After this, I can probably run through this all the way to the end because these are all very short, unimportant sections. So anyway, there we are. Any other questions?
I'm good, thank you very much. Ready to move on.
Ready to move on. All right, lovely. So also talking about the social perceptions of this, like talking about queer history and queer erasure in history and how that relates to this book. Gays, especially during this time, were very much seen as monstrous and persecuted. You want to try and find queer literature from this period. It's not queer literature, it's queer hate literature. Yay. But so there's the strong influence of the church and Puritan notions. Even atheists were persecuted at times. Percy Shelley was an atheist and he faced a lot of social ostracization because of his beliefs. And yeah, so there's a lot of struggle with queer people during this time, which both echoes the struggles of the monster and Frankenstein, but it also does give a separation between the fact that in this era, Mary Shelley almost certainly did not write in that queer coding because that queer coding would have gotten this novel absolutely destroyed, demolished.
Burned.
Pardon?
Burned.
Burned at the stake.
Set ablaze.
So these queer readings are probably only a modern byproduct of this book. And yet still, we can pretend that they're historical because there is also a lot of queer history surrounding Gothic literature, the era of Frankenstein and Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley, hang on, resetting the brain. As we mentioned earlier.
I did forget a question. I'll ask the question at the end.
At the end. But anyway, so Mary Shelley, as we were talking about earlier, wrote this book while staying in a chateau on a lake with all of her besties. Now, her besties included herself, who is rumoured to be bi, her husband, Percy Shelley, who was almost definitely at least bi, Lord Byron, famously bi, Dr. John Polidori,
it's even in his
probably
name.
gay. Huh?
Lord Byron.
Lord Byron. It's in his name. He also coined a lot of tropes. He was known for basically seducing everything that walked. It was incredible. And then
He
you've
did
also
not
got,
care if he saw it, it was his.
if he saw it, it was his. We watched a Mary Shelley movie where they were being as historically accurate as possible, and we just had like 10 seconds of Byron making out with Percy Shelley. Honestly, a vibe. Because they were together at one point. But and then there was also Dr. John Polidori, who was almost certainly gay. Dr. John Polidori and Lord Byron were together for a lot of that time while they were staying at that chateau on the lake. That's actually what inspired The Vampire, is John Polidori's experience with Lord Byron. And so The Vampire also can be seen as a very queer monster, just like Frankenstein's creature. But that is for a different time. But
We have a vampire with us in this podcast. Do you have anything to say about that?
No comment, guys.
No comment. Okay.
But so there's a lot of people within this time, and especially Mary Shelley's social circle, who were queer, and she was so very supportive of them. She had a trans man friend, and she helped him illegally get a passport with his male name so he could move to France where no one had known him as a woman. She sent a letter to a friend where she clearly admitted that she was attracted to both genders. When her husband, Percy Shelley, drowned with the guy he had an affair with, that guy's wife, Mary Shelley, was in love with that guy's wife. It was a confusing mess, but it was kind of beautiful. But so, whilst there probably almost certainly wasn't intentional queer coding, you can read into a lot of it through Mary Shelley's history and how that has informed her writing and possibly informed this view. But
I also like to think of it as the people who she was in that house of when she wrote the book potentially could have inspired some of the characters as well.
100%.
Because when you look at who she was in there with, it's like these people are like famously this way, and then the characters, honestly, when you look and you compare them, reflect them very, very heavily.
Yeah, you can see Byron's stubbornness in Frankenstein. You can see Polidori's care in Clerval. You can see Percy Shelley's wet cat tragic behavior in both Clerval and Frankenstein. I refer to Frankenstein as a wet cat quite a lot of the time. He sits in a boat and cries at mountains. Guess who also does that? Percy Shelley.
4 minutes, by the way.
4 minutes. Lovely. I've got like 3 more points to make, and then we're on to questions.
Questions, perfect.
Questions, perfect. But yeah, as much as I have spent the past 50 minutes almost yapping about the queer interpretations and readings of this novel, I wouldn't be remiss without mentioning that there are contradictions and other interpretations. Literature is 100% based on the person who's reading it, and everyone can read a novel in a different way. Friendships, especially male friendships, were more intimate during that time because marriages weren't as intimate. Marriages were forced and seen as contractual obligations. They weren't emotional. So friendships were far more emotional and far more emotionally driven. The coding, as I said, almost certainly wasn't intentional. We can read it today with our modern interpretation of queer media and queer coding, but back in that day, back in that era, that interpretation of queer media and queer coding would have been completely different. And this is based on Mary Shelley's life and an allegory for her abandonment of her own mother and her the deaths of her children. And so whilst that sense of abandonment from parents can be read into queer history, it's not what this novel was derived from. And as I said, all literature is subjective. Everyone brings their own side to the story, which helps them read it themselves. As a queer person myself, I was looking for that queer narrative within this story because I do that in almost every single story I read. I saw Henry Clerval and immediately went, that is a twink. I need to find him someone to ship with because that is what I do in every single one. And so this novel and this reading that I'm presenting is highly influenced by myself and is
Yeah.
completely subjective.
It's the same way as we just like with Jason Victor.
Yeah.
You know, we both saw that because we saw, you know, reflections of what we see from our lives. And Moona interpreted differently because it's what she saw through her experiences in her life. It's all very different what people get.
Yeah, I went out
and
for
it's
lunch.
it's really beautiful in that way because it means that everyone can connect to different things because everyone has their own experiences.
Yeah, it's a personal form of connection with their stories. I went out for lunch the other day with a bunch of friends and we were also discussing Jason Victor, and we were about split half and half. The six of us, half of us thought Jason Victor were romantic and the other half didn't. And yeah, everything is driven by personal experiences.
Like, even the way I view it is like, we can, like, you'll connect to something because you'll connect to that in some of the feelings for one way, and somebody else, like my like some of my family members have learning disabilities and other people might as well, and so they might connect to that feeling of being an outcast because and being different because of that, you know. It's 25 seconds. I'm just going to stop it now. We can go a bit over because we have questions.
Yes. I've spent 50 minutes yapping. Let's now go on to questions, maybe.
Yeah. All right. So my first question, which I forgot to ask before, was about the do you think any of like the mourning and the way that it was depicted could have and how he Victor greatly mourned for Henry, but not so much for Elizabeth, could potentially reflected lots of the mental struggles Mary Shelley could have faced?
I think Mary Shelley, look, she did face many distinct troubles and struggles throughout her life with her parents, losing her parents, her family, her children. I believe she got pregnant about 6 times and only had 3 children, 2 of which died in childhood. And so she did face a lot of struggles, and I'm sure she informed a lot of the grief of these characters and the pain of these characters from her own pain. However, there's nothing really to suggest that she faced a lot of mental health struggles. As much as she went through these bouts of pain, there's nothing to suggest that she also suffered from depression or anxiety. For a lot of her life, she was quite a strong woman. After Percy Shelley's death, it's quite poetic and romantic, if a little bit morbid. She kept his heart wrapped in his own poetry in her desk for years. And she cared for him, but she didn't mourn him longer than what one would seem as necessary. So whilst I think a lot of the pain in this book, as I said, is informed by Mary Shelley's own pain, I don't think this really reflects her mental health struggles that she probably didn't face.
All right. Now this one is a bit. This next question, which I have one more question after this. So I just thought of as you were going on.
Lovely.
But this one's kind of a bit more sad. So obviously we spoke about how coding usually was not intentional, but sometimes it was intentional. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts on when there was intentional coding to harm the image, like in the instance of so for people who don't know, Dracula is like the most famous vampire novel, but it was actually based on the actual first one. It was inspired by it, which is Camilla, which was the first ever vampire novel written by some what the hell is his name? I've got Joseph Sheridan something. I think it's like Fang, but with a U at the end instead of a G.
Oh my god. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah. And he kind of wrote it in a way because he wanted to show his disgust for it, but it's kind of it was actually interpreted in a different way from like a good point of view by a lot of people.
Yeah, so Camilla, I really don't know much about Camilla. I want to read it, but so that lesbian vampire novel, which was meant to basically go lesbians bad, but people read it and went lesbians good. I can't
even back then there was pretty good uptake of it, surprisingly.
Yeah. I can't think off the top of my head of many examples from this era of intentional queer coding, but yeah, you're quite right. It was all meant to harm and insult at that era. Percy Shelley, as I said, previously, he was an atheist, and that got him plenty of backlash. Queer people at this time, when they were referenced in literature, they were almost always referenced in a demonic, in a satanic, in a monstrous way. They were sentenced to jail. They were given lifelong ostracization of society. And yes, a lot of this coding of this era for queer coding is really bad and really mean. And ouch, it hurts. But at the same time, it also informs us as to the history of queer people and how much progress has been made since then, with the fact that we can read, we have enough queer media and queer coding in our novels and literature today that we are still able to read these kind of queer versions of these old novels which weren't written with it as an original way. Our media has come so far that yes, a lot of old queer coding was bad and horrible, but we're still given these respites in these other novels, primarily gothic and horror novels, which do show a modern version of queer coding, which is actually quite a companionship almost to queer people. We're able to sit here and go, wow, it wasn't written to be queer, but it can be read as queer, and that's quite a comfort to many people.
All right. What was the last question I was gonna ask? Are unreliable narrators.
Yeah.
Now, I have, so basically people who don't know, unreliable narrator is when the person who the story is, so somebody's telling their own story, because you can never like remember something fully how it is. Like,
Yeah.
if you've ever had an argument with somebody and later you're asked to recant it, both people come out with different stories because it's from their point of view, what they think, and they'll usually be more mad at the other person.
Yeah.
And Frankenstein's really interesting because it has all those different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so you've got several unreliable narrators, and it's really like what you have to kind of depict or think through yourself, like what actually happened, what is being over dramatized here, what could be left out to make the person
look better or worse.
Look better. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of unreliable narrators in this story, I'm not good at interpreting unreliable narrators. I usually just take everything written in books at face value. But thinking about that right now, it is interesting how when we see Frankenstein talking about the creature, Frankenstein does portray such a monstrous version of this creature. He's big, he's ambling, he's evil, he destroys everything in his wake, he's ruthless and emotionless. But when we hear from the creature is actually, after years of experience and learning how to fit into society, the creature himself is actually quite refined and sincere and genuine and caring. A lot when we hear of Frankenstein's interpretations of the creature's actions, Frankenstein is like, he's emotionless and he just hurts because he doesn't realize that it hurts. But when we hear the creature's interpretation of the actions, we hear that the creature was doing that to get Frankenstein's attention. The creature always had motive which he felt justified his means. And so you can almost see instances of that unreliable narrator when you switch between feeling like the creature is the villain when we're listening to Frankenstein and feeling like Frankenstein is the villain when we listen to the creature.
Yeah, once again, I think I pretty much summed up how I thought about it. I have not read the text. I actually need to go reread it. But yeah, obviously you can't really, you can always think about, once again, like what you believe could be false or manipulated. But sometimes it's like almost indefinite to say what, and I do agree with you on the instance of, I guess potentially, from Frankenstein's perspective, the monster took a lot from him. Like he kills her, but it wasn't an accident from memory.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
It
it
was
wasn't.
100. It
Why
was.
was his
I think it was a mix between accidental and
accident?
intentional. The creature
Yeah.
definitely wanted to harm the brother. I don't think the creature quite realized that he was killing the brother.
Yeah. And I guess that because from what I saw from that, the monster, because that was quite early on, wasn't it?
It was about halfway, I think. It was after
Yeah, but
Clerval's
it was.
death, but before Elizabeth's death. Because
And
I think that's why Frankenstein returned to his family home was after Clerval's death, was because of the death of his brother.
I thought that his brother's death came first.
Maybe it did.
I thought it happened after he abandoned the monster because the monster tried to find him.
Hang on.
Just letting you guys know, we are well over.
yeah.
We are 1 hour in with the recording.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm
God.
just informing you.
Frankenstein. Justine's death, the monster. Right, it did happen before Clerval's death. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I guess because the monster was new, so from what I gathered from that was that he didn't understand what he was
The
doing.
monster was only a few years old at that time.
The
monster he had watched society from the distance. For people who have read the book, the Lacey family and all of that, he'd watched society from a distance. He hadn't actually involved himself in society. And so his interaction with Frankenstein's brother was one of his first interactions with humans properly, who could properly see him and interact with him. And
exactly.
whilst he did intend to cause harm, he didn't realize that he was going to kill.
He didn't understand the concept of death, I believe, at the time, or that the fact that what he was doing. And then Victor didn't understand that he didn't understand that, and it just created this like big clash and like conflict between their views. Like he thought of the creature as this like killer and this like this psychotic killer who just ran around and mauled people, but the creature was just trying to figure out society and like he didn't understand anything around him. He was trying to piece it together by himself. That was all I had to say. If you have any last minute questions, Moona?
Nah, I think I'm good. I think I've understood everything. I don't really have any more questions.
All right. If you have anything last to say, Angle, feel free, because otherwise, I think that's it.
I think I'm pretty happy with all of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and doing this, by the way. It's been
thank you. It was
amazing.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, this was really fun.
It was a new experience, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's so great to have somebody else on and get their perspective on things. I do know the text, I have read it, but I've never like studied it like you have, and it was great to even see some of your extra knowledge on it and your interpretations on it. And it was just really, really beautiful.
It was quite nice to put all of my knowledge to a purpose.
By the way, people, if you want to see more videos from Angle, their channel is linked down below. You have some puzzle compilations. I was sitting through and watching them.
Oh, nice.
I love puzzles. I have a slight obsession.
So do I. Yeah. I hope to do more video essay stuff on my channel at some point.
Ooh, I look forward to it. I've been thinking about doing some stuff like that too.
We'd love to have you back sometime, so if you have any ideas, type a little message, send it across.
I will.
And we'll make it happen.
Maybe I'll yap about Dracula when I'm done with Dracula.
I'm about to read it, so that will be.
I feel like that'd be very good because we do have a resident vampire here.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think we're all good for today.
Mm.
Yeah, that was really, really fun. All right.
That was.
Thank you all for watching this far. And once again, if you have watched this far and you're not subscribed yet, what the hell are you doing?
Don't forget as well to subscribe to all the other members of Eternia 5. The links will be in the description.
Yes. And our Patreon.
You can join it for free. The link to that will also be in the description.
Free
All it is,
Patreon.
yeah, free Patreon. We've got it set up so that you, the viewers, can tell us what you want us to do podcasts about next.
So yeah, any game, book, movie, pop it in there. We'll make a video about it. Please, we need ideas.
Well, aside from
It's
the
slowly
fact that we
coming
have to do
down.
our research on it first, but we will make videos about it, guaranteed.
100%.
And also, Espen, I
cashback
think
guarantee,
do you want to tell the viewers about what you had me help you set up the other day?
People, guess what? Finally, I have my streaming setup. My streaming setup all done. I have. We spent way too many hours on call the other day. I have. I love these little sound overlays you have.
Oh mate, it's just from
I
Discord.
The streaming overlay. Everything is prepared.
She's good to go
And
for
so-
streaming. Woo! So now hopefully more than just me and Callie from Eternia 5 will be streaming now. And that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like we said before, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Thank you. Bye.